Awesome. Welcome. Good morning. And if anyone got my email this morning, a few of you, I love your attention to detail. You were like, I'm confused. You're in a construction training program 9 to 3:30, but you're also teaching the class. You guys are so observant. I love you. Yes, I was able to negotiate being late for the next two Tuesdays. I was like, well, I have this thing called a job and I kind of have to still fulfill it a little bit. So we will still be here today and next Tuesday, which is exciting. Awesome. So I think we'll be able to kind of hop through a couple of these. I wasn't sure. There isn't anyone here that hasn't been here before, correct? I'm just looking through and I recognize everyone. Kelly, have you been here for the previous ones? You're the only name
Sorry,
that
I'm
I
munching
can.
my breakfast. No,
No,
but
you're totally.
I've
You've been
taken
watching
classes
the recording?
through other
No,
organizations.
I know who you are. I just wasn't sure if you had been here for the previous two.
No, I
Cool.
saw this
Okay.
time, so I hopped on. Thank you so much
No
for asking.
worries. Yeah. We will give you a second to introduce yourself just because I know everybody else knows each other at this point.
Oh yeah,
And we would love to know a little bit about you too. And happy to see you again.
yeah, great to
Um, yeah, so actually I'm just gonna kick it over to you, Kelly, if you don't mind just introducing yourself real quick, just so the group knows who you are and what kind of business you run, and then we'll dig back in.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Kelly Borgman. I by day I am a registered dietitian who has a private practice called Inner Path Nutrition based in Cambridge, Vermont. And currently expanding to a group practice. So I need this information
Cool.
right now. Year later.
Awesome. I
Thank
love that. Yeah, thanks so much for introducing yourself and happy to have you here. And if Kelly, I don't know if you saw, there are recordings for the previous 2 weeks. So if you would like to catch up on those and watch those, if you can just email me. Emily, I'm just throwing my email in the, I know you have it, but just in case, if you just email me at that address and say, can you send me the previous recordings? I can shoot those over to you. So feel free to do that if you'd like. Awesome. All right. Everyone else we know, and you all know me at this point. So we're going to hop right through some of these. And I just want to, I find these questions just a really great place to ground us each time, because I know a lot can happen in a week and it's easy for us to, at least I'll speak for myself, it's easy for me to get ungrounded in business and in the hustle and bustle of just all things life. And so I like to use these questions to give us a chance to just kind of ground back in and remember our intention over these 4 weeks. And so I'd love to just give a little space. I know I've read these over twice now. Anything coming up for you this week? Anything that feels relevant in terms of like, if you've been exploring where your business can be of best service or thinking about the resources you have access to right now, anything that's changed in the last week, any needs that have shifted or evolved in the past week. And then also just thinking about, what are you set up to do the remainder of this year and how's that feeling and anything new come up for you there. So I'm just gonna give us a couple minutes to pause here. If you want to type, you can type, but if you want to unmute yourself, feel free, go for it. I'd love to hear from you.
I'll go.
Yeah, go.
Um, these questions have been really, really cool for me lately because going through a lot. I think everyone knows I have a little baby at home. He is 3 months. So things are shifting. And so, like you said, having these grounding questions are really exciting. And they helped me. So I was thinking, more about the what do you need? Kind of has been the one that I've been most focused on, but like the different categories of need, like me, family and community, like in separate pockets. And so I've been thinking about, the community one because my business is a tap room, but it's very much like a neighborhood style gathering place. And in the last week, a another local business owner. He started a food truck in our town this summer. There is not a lot of businesses in Milton, especially around food and beverage. And he recently had a heart attack, so he had to close his
Wow.
truck.
Oh
Um,
no. Like
and
permanently?
I'm not sure.
Maybe.
He had like triple bypass
Oh
situation.
my. Yeah.
But and just thinking about that, I saw there was like a GoFundMe on our, community page. And I was excited to come up with a fundraiser for him.
Mhm.
So my husband and
Nice.
I are going to open up the bar and do like all proceeds go to. But it just feels good to do.
Yeah.
I love planning events,
Yeah.
and I've been wanting to do more around the community.
Mm.
But I like when things kind of, it just feels like an organic fit rather than me
Yeah.
forcing
Yeah.
like, let's do a fundraiser for something like,
Yeah. Yeah.
shove it.
Yeah. It's
So
intimate. Yeah.
yeah, it just feels
Yeah.
like pretty organic. So that that question has just kind of been like in there floating around. And then
Yeah.
when that happened, I was like, this is my community needs this. So
Yeah. There's a
it was
need.
really cool. I appreciate this breakdown.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. Yeah.
Sure.
That's so great. Other reflections, things you guys want to share from the past week?
Hi there.
Hi. Welcome, Leisha.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm kind of settling into your questions, and
Yeah.
like I feel like I've been writing all about that all the time, and then all of a sudden to switch gears and verbalize that
Yeah. Such different mediums,
is
right?
another go, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything specific coming up for you?
Um, well, so I'm in the middle of writing, and I've had this kind of mushroom in the writing, so to speak. So a newsletter became a blog and became kind of putting another level of infrastructure in to make things
Mm.
connect and be more specific in the ask. And I look forward to hearing what you were just speaking about, Lauren, because I think it has to do with this first question about collective and generating conversation and, getting responses and all of that, and doing that through an ask,
Mm.
fundraising,
Mhm.
going toward a loan, that backing in loans, and looking at securing finances to continue forward, and learning how to language to draw interest. And I guess it's like a lot of my service has to do with intellectual service, because there's a lot of writing
Mhm.
and talking, like, there's a conversation even with clients that's kind of tapped into a direct message.
Mhm.
So I guess it comes back to messaging.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Maybe one more share before we move on. I know you have things percolating in your head, and I'm very good at sitting in awkward silence for long periods of time. So take your time to, it's a nice opportunity. We don't get a lot of opportunities to share about our business and be in community with folks. So I encourage you, if you are feeling something, go for it.
I have a
Yeah, go for it.
thing that I've been working on. So I'm in this kind of in between space before I can relaunch the family business, but also trying to figure out how to do it successfully and all of the like martyr ownership stuff that my parents insisted on running their business, kind of like never taking pay and being generous, but it made our business noteworthy, but it's not going to pay the bills when I need to run it. And the emotional side of money is so interesting when you're like running your own business, doing all this. So I've been looking into and doing a lot of trying to figure out the neurodivergent part of it and the dopamine fix from spending and saving money at the same time. But there's just so many layers to this that are outside the business. They're just kind of built into like my family system and our society and capitalism and all the things. So it's really interesting to sit with these questions and really ponder and then just be like, oh dear, okay, we got some work to do. But that side of thing is just, nobody talks about it in the business, tax prep classes and business.
No, totally.
So
which is probably why I don't enjoy any of them.
No, well, and you neither. But it's really, it's so much more powerful than any of the other things, and it can really make or break things. So that's been interesting.
But, no, I appreciate you highlighting that. I think it's I think there are quite a few things that like for instance, like physical money is not like good or bad. It has no morality, right? Like it's literally an inanimate object, and it's the value, both like financially and emotionally and intellectually, and that we ascribe to money that like has power, right? So it's like the physical dollar bill itself like has no intrinsic value. It has no charge. It's not negative or positive. And I think the same thing about like food, or clothing, like any physical object. It has no morality, but we've been taught a lot of the time to ascribe morality to these inanimate objects, which I think in some way, first is like really purposeful, but secondly, it kind of disorients us so that we ascribe this value, and we can either like blame or praise this inanimate object instead of actually looking at like our attachment to said object, or our emotions or feelings or connections to said object, right? So if I can tell a story of like, for instance, to your example of like making money is bad, right? Like it's just not, it's greedy, it's it's not virtuous. It's like, if I can tell that story, I can then move all of the weight, all of that energy and that charge onto an inanimate object, which is money, instead of dealing with like whatever it is inside me that's having that triggering emotion towards money. Does that make sense? And so I think sometimes just remembering that, like, the physical products we sell, the intellectual property we sell, the money itself, the like whatever it is, like those things don't actually have morality. It's the morality we're ascribing to it instead. And so that gives us then like, and if we see that relationship, we actually have like a hell of a lot more power over how we want to define that relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so much shame with missing a bill, paying a bill late, that is, it's like, well, I have ADHD, like that's never going to happen. And then you figure out, 40 years old, you finally figure out the tricks, especially thank you technology. But it's interesting now that I have systems set up, looking back at this lifetime of struggles. It's like, no, they teach you how to do homework when you have ADHD in school. They don't teach you how to remember to pay your bills.
Yeah.
You know, all the
Yeah.
tutors in the world and all of the
Yeah.
help and everything
Yeah.
never gave me that. And it's really interesting applying that to the business
Mhm.
when it comes to things like that. So and
Yeah.
also my child's obsession with money and
Yeah.
this kind
Yeah.
of like, wait, whoa, hold on, it's just a number, honey, it doesn't mean much.
Yeah. Well, it only means what you decide it means, right?
Right.
Like this is a 100%
Yeah.
subjective reality we have
Right.
created.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd love to add to your point of, and I think we touched on this a little bit in the first session, but I think it's always a good reminder that our ignorance and lack of experience with money is not an accident, right? This is a very purposeful system that is designed to keep workers and owners separated, right? And so the owning class, these are like our, our multimillionaires, our billionaires, and even like our politicians and our governmental systems. There's a reason that like tax is so confusing. It is so that our working class continues to be befuddled and too busy to simply understand how wealth is actually working. And it allows our owning class to continue to consolidate wealth. And so I think it's just really important to remember, like, it's not an accident if you feel ignorant in this space, and B, like, it's actually even more than not an accident, it's very purposeful, right? And so the very fact of showing up here and trying to understand your finances, like, is an act of resistance, right? It's like that. Just showing up here is an act of resistance. And it's when, if you've resisted anything, or you have a child and you watch them resist either you asking them to do something, or resisting going to bed, or resisting eating dinner, right? That resistance is really fucking uncomfortable. Like there's usually a lot of tears and screaming. Like, it's not fun, right? Like, resistance is uncomfortable inside our body. And so, like, apply that here, right? By showing up, you are committing to an act of resistance, and that resistance is likely going to feel uncomfortable. Yeah. I'm just gonna look at our chat here. Oh, I love that, Lori, celebrating reminders on your iPhone. Yeah. Good, Monica. I'm so glad that felt like a welcome reminder. And Leisha, you said, I'm set up to invite people together indoors in a quiet place with a lot of air and space and ambiance. Yeah, that's a great thing when you were thinking about, like, what do you have access for? And yeah, absolutely. Cool. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. I know it's sometimes uncomfortable, not always easy. And also I find like there's an energy, or like a requirement of energy in sharing. And for some of us, we're really tired. So to ask you to exert more energy is a lot, and it doesn't go unnoticed, and I appreciate it. Cool. So I would love to check in on how our homework went. And this is like there's no like getting in trouble. So if you like, you're like, I have not put a single fucking number in that budget, Emily, that's okay. And you can share that here, and we're going to have some time to work on the budget some more. And Kelly, I'll just to give you a little background, last week we worked on collecting all of our finances from this year. So all of our expenses, as well as all of our revenue, and I'll share that link to the budget sheet. And so everyone's homework this past week was to like finish getting you up like year to date, right? So getting all your finances up to today, inputted. How do we do with that?
I have to share with you a silly little tidbit. So my
Yeah.
best friend lives on the West Coast, but we talk all the time.
Yeah.
And I told her about realizing the subscriptions and how much, like,
Yeah.
you know, Sirius Radio and how much it's costing, whatever. She went in, she and her husband have an open relationship. She went into his phone and checked the subscriptions on Apple. And she's like, he doesn't even use this. We're paying $100 a month for NBA. What is this? We used it once and we forgot to cancel.
Oh boy.
So, but she's like, so like, we're starting this cycle of like finding the finances, talking about it. Like, I don't have a lot of girlfriends where we openly talk about money. And it's really nice to kind of have that. I mean, she's also like doing a little too much of babysitting her husband or taking care of it for him. So we're, you know, navigating that like thing. But thank you for that budget, because it's really, she's like, send me the free link. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. No, and it's like, it's true to your point. We're all finding our way through this individually, and the way we find our way through is always like a deep reflection of our previous experiences. So, you know, that's kind of, those stories will come into play here too. Lauren, you said you completed through July. Awesome. Anna, you're working on your homework now. You feel like, why I lost you? Where'd you go? There you are. You feel like you keep, quote, breaking the formulas in the sheet, and you want to do all the magical calculations. How are you breaking the formulas, Anna?
I don't know. I think I tried to like customize the sheet too much. Like I wanted it to be simple. Like I don't like to have to scroll past all the lines I'm not using. So I was trying to like
to delete them,
I'm
and
luckily
then
I made a copy of the copy of the copy. So I went back to the original copy I made, and I'm just redoing it.
Okay. If you want at any point, I'm gonna like totally offer my partner up. He's like an Excel wizard, and so if you would like him to go through and fix your formulas for you so that you can like get rid of stuff, I'm sure he would be happy to do that.
Oh, wow.
So just let me know. Yeah, I'm like, honey, can you do this thing? No, he loves Excel. And yeah, so just let me know if that's helpful, because I can empathize with that. I would not enjoy all the extra lines in there too. But we could figure it out, I'm sure.
Okay,
maybe we'll have a bonus session and he'll come and show us how to adjust formulas.
Ooh, that would be cool. I think I just got it, like it looks right now.
Okay, cool.
It looks right, and it's gonna be enough for me to do today's work. So I'm feeling good. So thank you.
Awesome. Perfect. Leisha, you said you sought out and received support, and you're heading toward direct mentorship and using the worksheets with their counsel next week. Awesome. Is this with Ben, Leisha? Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. I am so glad you got connected with him. He's really a wonderful, he's a really wonderful human, which I feel like is always a great thing to have when you're trying to get help on finances. So awesome. Keep us posted on how that keeps going. Monica, you said yours is complete. You even made your spreadsheet more colorful than the shades of gray and a softer font, so it's easier for you to look at. I love that, Monica. Way to make it yours. Lori, you said I completed mine through this month and it was a little bit depressing. Awesome. We'll work on that today. Our goal today is to turn that part around and make it less depressing. And then Molly, you said you got partway there. You got a little hung up on salary/wages because you just pay yourself whatever's left after expenses. So that varies month to month.
I have a question about that. I honestly couldn't figure out like my own payment is both an expense and an income. No. Okay. So it's, I'm considering it an expense, right? When I pay myself my salary.
Yeah, that's an expense. Okay. Yeah.
Great.
It would not be an income. It would be like the individual people that are paying you. Those are the incomes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do reinvest my income sometimes in my business. So I'm just getting a little confused about like how to differentiate those.
And the other thing I'll say, Molly, to your, because I'm not sure if this is true for anyone else, that you pay yourself whatever's left over after expenses. We will talk next week's session is all about figuring out how much to pay yourself. And ideally, Molly, we'll get you to a place where you have the same owner draw either biweekly or monthly, and it doesn't vary.
Okay.
And like that can take a little time, which is okay, you know, especially if like the income, and we'll talk today about how can we kind of make the income a little either more steady or increase it so that we have more like a wider range to pull
Yeah.
from.
Okay, great.
But yeah, eventually we'd like you to get to a place where it's, instead of being what's left over, it's the same amount every month.
Okay.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Sounds like we're on the path. So we're getting things done. And let's jump in. Okay. So I'm going to give you a little time today. If you're still working on the budget, that's okay. You'll have some time to keep working on that. But what we're going to kind of shift towards is we've been accumulating all the data from the past. Sorry, the jets are going overhead right now and they're just so loud. I find them like, I'm very auditorily sensitive, and so it like it's hard for me to talk. Blech. So we've been, up until this point, the last 2 weeks, we've been focused on gathering the information from this past year. Now what we want to do is start looking at how much accuracy can we project the income coming into the business in the next 3 months. And could be 6 months, could be even a year, but I'd like you to have at least the next 3 months projected. And then what I want to do is give us a little time to talk about, if you're, maybe if you are Lori and you're like, that was depressing, I don't like the projection. I know Lori was talking about budget, but if we're also looking at the projection and we're like, ooh, the projection, like either A, I have nothing in projection, like I don't have any idea how much money is going to come in, or I don't like the amount of money. We're going to have a little space to work on that and talk about how we might influence that. Cash flow projections, this is another term that if you do ever look for a loan or financing, or you're applying for a grant, folks might ask you for a cash flow projection. And so this is essentially like a sheet that's going to look at how much money you're anticipating coming in. And then hopefully you're going to have some information or data or reports to support that projection, right? So if a bank is like, show us a cash flow projection for the next year, and you're like, I am going to project that I'm going to increase my revenue 10% every single month for the next year, they're going to say, cool, like how are you going to do that, right? Like what's the strategy behind it? And so we'll talk about that a little bit, of like, how do we figure out what that strategy is? I'll also note, depending on the type of person you are, if you're kind of more of like a glass half full versus a glass half empty, this can be an interesting space. If you're glass half full, sometimes folks will feel like if the business is doing well, they're just like, I'm sure it'll just figure itself out. It'll work, right? And that can be kind of a dangerous place, because it's like, well, it might, it might not. And so like, let's put some things into place to make sure it does. And if you're glass half empty type of person, even when things are going well, I've seen folks be like, yeah, but you have no idea what could happen tomorrow. Like I could just lose everything tomorrow kind of person, right? And that's also not a really helpful space to be in. We want to be able to trust that the business with some level of certainty is going to be okay day to day. Obviously, we can't anticipate everything. But I also don't want you living in a place of fear that you're like, I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, and you're kind of paralyzed by that feeling too. Do either of those buckets feel true for any of you? Does anyone kind of ride on one side versus the other? I tend to be overly optimistic. I'm like, I can figure it out. I'm fine. Yeah, okay, more optimistic, half full. Cool, awesome. I think as long as like I think optimism plus strategy is like a dope place to be, and it's exciting, and we can kind of keep moving forward. Okay, so there was a survey done by QuickBooks, and they found that 60% of small business owners reported that cash flow has been a problem for them in the past year. And I think it's funny because I also think, a little bit to the sentiment I was just sharing, it's important for us to get to a place, like we shouldn't always be worried about cash flow, right? And cash flow, we should be worried about cash flow when it is an actual worry, versus just like this state of anxiety of like living in a state of kind of unproven anxiety is not a great spot for us to be in. And so I'm curious for you to share, if this stat includes you. Like, do you feel like, are you currently worried about cash flow? Is cash flow currently a problem? And if you are like, yes, yes, it is, I'd like you to add, how do you know it is? What are the facts? What's the stats to prove, like, to back up your yes, this is an issue right now?
Emily, is this for in the chat? Sorry, I just got
Whatever you want. Yeah, no,
Okay.
you're good. Chat or unmute yourself. Feel free to talk. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I could just talk. Cash flow has been an interesting journey for the Arrowhead Lodge because we opened 5 weeks before COVID. And so my first 2 years, I felt like I couldn't really make any confident projections because I wasn't sure if the information I had was because it was our first year of business, or if it was because of COVID, or if it like I had numbers, but I didn't know why they were the way they were, or like there were a lot of different factors that could be
too many variables.
Too many variables. Thank you. So I have had, like, I've known that cash flow has, and then I also was furloughed from my full-time job. So then it became, oh my gosh, I'm either need to go get another job or I'm solely dependent on this one little business. So cash flow has been a fun journey. And I think I'm pretty good at managing it. It's been an extreme situation, I feel like. So now that we're kind of getting out of that, and into some more like steadier numbers, that it will get better and easier. And I was able to receive a grant last January that helped with that. I didn't have to have super anxiety about cash flow because I know like when our peaks and valleys are. But I want to have more of what you were saying of like, this is how much I pay myself every other week. And because like right now I'm like on top of it. I'm like weekly. Am I good? Am I good? Are we good? So I want to be able to back off a bit more. And so that's where I'm at.
So it's like the cash flow is there, but it's also requiring like a hyper vigilance from you. That's not very comfortable to live with long term.
I would just like to be able, like right now I'm like pretty on top of things weekly, just like my thumb is like very much on the pulse. I'd like to just like take it back a little bit so I don't have to be as obsessed with it.
Totally. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing. Anna, you said one way you know that cash flow is a problem is you're poking around every account for looking for the money to pay bills. Yep, that's a solid yes. Molly, you said it totally varies month to month based on how much you're invoicing clients for. You know, because we don't have enough cash in the bank to pay your credit card bills in full. Yep. Lori, you said I don't have consistent income, and what I do make is little compared to the amount of time and effort I spend. So that's a big one. I know because I'm not contributing to our account to pay bills with your business. Yep, absolutely. And you also noted that there's some shame that comes up for you around that. And I have like totally been there before where I'm like, I'm not pulling my weight. And that is a really uncomfortable position in partnership. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing. Next question. I'm curious for folks that have been in business at least this a year, maybe. Have you noticed that there are, to Lauren's point, she mentioned there are points in the year where she makes more money and points where she makes less. So she's been able to kind of track the variance across the year. Do other folks have that data, or have other folks either just like intuitively notice that or have data to prove that? I'm curious if you're aware of it. Leisha, you said, yes, you've always lived with cash flow issues with a gradual downfall over the years, but your assets are both the gain of more freedom and an intellectual asset that gets better with age. I love that. So you have an optimistic view that you can get through this better all the time if you keep going. Yeah. Do other folks have an idea of like when business is busier? This could be another way of thinking of it, is like, are there moments in the year where you are more busy, and are there moments in the year where you are less busy? Lori, business feels slower in the summer. Yep. Anna, you're starting to understand the season of your income, but that is all just speculation still. Yeah, totally. Anna, do you mind sharing like when you think folks are more apt to buy versus when they're not?
Yeah, and again, this is speculation based on
Sure.
what I'm starting to kind of feel into. And I think that this, like, I think the fall is a time when people are more likely to buy, and then the beginning of the year, like the after the new
That
year,
New Year
are
vibe.
kind of
Yep.
the two, I think, potentials for sales for my, or the more sort of passive parts of my business where I'm really working to sell those online courses. And then I did love your email this morning, because I've been thinking a lot about diversification. As you may have noticed from my post the last 24 hours, I have been
I was like,
inundated
what is
with
this?
opportunities for diversifying my work.
Yeah.
And I so one of the other avenues is doing early childhood conferences, and so those also have kind of seasons, and I was like just behind the ball on those this year because I did outreach. People are like, oh, we just closed the the window for submissions for workshops, so there's like a moment where there's a moment in the year where I need to submit those, and then the fall workshops tend to happen, and then again in the spring. So there's like also kind of, so there's like a couple of different waves I could ride. I'm realizing that where one could fill the gap of the other. But I've yet to have like actual evidence, like the actual money in the bank to prove it. But
no, and this is, I mean, I think this is part of why I want so badly for you guys to like adhere as much as you can to the budget sheet, because it will be able, right? Instead of being in this place where we're like either overly optimistic or overly pessimistic, if we have an up-to-date budget and we can see the charts, right, and we can see the data, we don't have to guess so much, and we don't have to like just kind of rely on our gut instinct, which often can just be wrong in this space. I think there's a lot of places where like gut instinct is solid and follow it, and then there are a lot of places where it can actually just be a little bit misleading and not helpful. There was something you said, Anna, that triggered a thought. Yeah, oh, around like there's like certain kind of like seasons to be like certain waves to be riding, and I've absolutely found that in my business. I remember the first year I did a group coaching program, I was like fighting tooth and nail to get people to show to the calls during the summer. And I was like, this sucks. Like, this isn't fun. To Monica's point, like people would cancel, people would like no show. I was like, this is like this makes me just not even want to do coaching to begin with. And then the second year I ran the program, I still tried to make it work because I was like, no, people still have to work on their business during the summer. And again, I was met with the exact same resistance. Nobody wanted to show up. Nobody wanted to do it. People would even ask for refunds. They would ask to back out of the program, which is like, it's one thing to like not be making money. It's a whole nother thing for people to be asking for their money back. like that's really like that's moving in the opposite direction that you're trying to go, right? And so, and after those 2 years, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try taking the whole summer off. We're just not even gonna offer coaching during the summer. And it's worked for the last like 2-3 years. I just have the whole summer off, and I'm like, oh, this is like, I get to enjoy my time. Nobody's like asking for refunds or trying to get me to like modify the services in any way, which is really helpful. And also to your point, Anna, of like, I've now, after like about 2.5 years of doing consulting work, have started to see kind of those waves and those trends. And they do like, they'll a bunch, and Molly, I'm curious if this happens for you, but like I'll get a lot of inquiries at once, and then it like fades away, and then I get a lot of inquiries, and then it fades away. And so it's building systems to support when that big wave comes, that I can take all the inquiries and figure out how to pace them, and then not worrying so much like nothing's wrong with me or I didn't mess up when it's quiet, right? Like it's not a me issue. It's just like, this is the season that is more quiet for the business. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like this summer I was piecing things together, and then this fall I like can't even imagine how to handle all the work I have. It's wild. Like people just get their act together in the fall and plan a bunch of projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, Marika.
So I have the business, It's Arthur's Fault, ran since 2000. So I have all of this data, all of this knowledge of like seasonality and shifting. And we managed a recession where everybody, like we used to do cooking classes. It was a big income thing, and everyone was out of work. So they took them. And then all of a sudden, no one could sign up for cooking classes because they were working 2 jobs to try to earn what they were earning pre-recession.
Yep.
And they just died, like dead in the water. That huge base of income disappeared. Now I am so nervous because we had a methodology of fresh product, right? And if you sit on product, you're losing money. But in order to save money, you need to make big batches.
Yeah.
And so we made everything in our home, tiny batches, tons of flavor. That's part of our notoriety and why we have such an incredible customer base that 3 years later is still wanting product. But I am nervous about, number one, the physicality of selling. I need to be at events. I need to be doing in-store tasting. What I saw was that if I delivered to a store and I didn't have a follow-up tasting or follow-up with posts that I delivered, if I let somebody else deliver, it sat on the shelf and I had to take back expired product. So if I didn't go and do the work. So right now, when I relaunch, I will not be doing wholesale. I can't take that 60% cut when it's such small batch, made by hand. But I also can't do all that work to sell it, to put money in somebody else's pocket. But the other side of it is I'm so nervous about the physicality of selling the events. The farmers markets were really dwindling, like really badly towards the end, right before the pandemic. Like I would barely make $300 a week, and it just was not working for me. So I know that I'm not going to go back for that. My family also just can't support me being gone for 16 hours, both weekend days. It's not worth it. But I don't know how to figure out the balance of physically being present in the business without it destroying me. But that's what has to happen. Like selling the sauce is what sells the sauce. Giving out tastings, like it's what does it. While at the same time managing this, should you make a whole ton and push to sell it really hard, or run the risk of being sold out and in this rat race of I got to make more, then I have to find the money to buy all the raw ingredients and put the production into play, which is what I see all of my counterparts doing, of this like race to produce because they sold out because they put these systems in place based on seasonality, and they either blew it out of the water or now they're left with product that they have to somehow sell. I don't know what the answer is. And that's the number one kind of concern for me as far as cash flow of like, what can I depend on? I can't depend on myself because if I've got a sick kid, like I'm out. And shipping it is sort of okay, but honestly, the jars are really heavy and they break because we use glass. So it's not ideal to ship. Like one jar of sauce costs more to ship than you pay for the jar.
One suggestion, and we can also like start to move into, you know, I want to give us some space to also just like brainstorm specific questions like this, which is so helpful. And I just met with a business owner last week who was like, I really want to be doing, she really wants to start a furniture line and like build her own furniture line. And she's a carpenter and she has all the skills and everything, but similar to, you know, product gets really tricky. It's like, it's a whole different type of business. And especially if you're looking at product that expires or a product like for this furniture maker, like she doesn't have space to have, you know, 15 dining room tables built. Like, it's like, you know, like, so like, what is she going to just make them to order? Is she going to like, how do you navigate those spaces? And my biggest suggestion in any time you're like, I don't know logistically how to do this next step and like how to make this work, is across the board informational interviews. Find the people that are already doing this. Find the people that are either a step ahead of you, 2 steps ahead of you, 3 steps ahead of you, and ask them, like, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can I, whether that's on Zoom or on the phone or in person, and just ask them, like, how did you get to where you were? How did you make these key decisions? Did you buy a ton of product and wing it, right? Or were you more conservative and you sold out a couple times and you learned, yep, I can sell this, so now I'm going to push a big order? Are you shipping? Are you not? Are you doing the farmers markets? Do you have kids, right? Like, ask these questions to figure out how are they, because there are people out there that are successfully doing this, right? We know that, we see them, they're selling things. And so for us, it's like, this is where you need to do the market research, right? We need to figure out, how does this work and how did you make it work? And then with those pieces of information, because you're not the exact same human and you don't have the exact same product, we then can start to apply it to our own situation, right? Yeah. I was thinking, when you were talking, I was thinking specifically of Alex Schumann of Nomadic, or not Nomadic anymore, Vermont Marshmallow Company.
She and I took Power Forward with the CWE.
Oh, nice.
And it was funny because she was in her second year, and I was technically in my second year, but I was pregnant.
I was like, but she doesn't have children, right? And so like, and it's important.
It's so interesting, the dynamic of like, and when Dad passed away, I interviewed a ton of people, you know, Claire at Butterfly Bakery. I went to CWE. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing and I need help. And what it came down to is kind of a moral question of, do I want to make small batch, which I know is better for the environment and better for our customer base, or do I want to make big batches cheaply and quickly? And that's where I get stuck in this like poop. I don't know what to do.
This is the decision that every person that goes through Jumpstart with me has to come to, right? If you want to be small batch and you want to make everything by hand, you are most likely not going to make enough money to live off of. Like, that's just kind of, unfortunately, the reality of capitalism. And the alternative is like, find a way to scale, right? And you're also going to like move yourself more into a managerial position. You're not going to be in charge of making that product anymore. And you're going to be in charge of managing humans. And are you okay with that? And so what I think sometimes people don't necessarily talk enough about is, there is like a middle in between option where you can continue like the craft and the small handmade stuff. You're just going to need to diversify and find something else to supplement the income. And whether that's a part-time job or you build some other revenue stream in the business that is not so labor intensive, or oh gosh, my watch, or you're like you know, I've seen people come up with, like, the cooking classes, for instance, are a great example of like an additional revenue stream. It's more intellectual property based, less physical product based, right? And so it's kind of, I think it's unfortunate you can't like have your cake and eat it too, right? Like you can't make really nice handcrafted things at volume. Like it's just, unless you want to build a co-op, you could build a co-op and then everybody is like making handcrafted stuff and you're all doing it together, right? So there are options, but it's yeah, it's figuring out. I think it's also like coming back to those 4 questions of like, where, like, what is your business set up to do? What do you need? Right? And knowing you can do this in stages. We don't have to do it all right now. Yeah. Um, so back to our cash flows. Another thing that's helpful about knowing your cash flows is it helps you make more informed decisions. So, you know, for instance, if you do need to buy a new laptop, or you are thinking about opening a storefront, or you're wondering if maybe you're ready to hire, right? If we have a good pulse on cash flow and we know how much money is going to be coming into the business in the future, we can make more informed decisions, that, you know, in regards to decisions that require a lot of money. And we can feel a little bit more confident about that. And also on the flip side, we know when we need to be focused on putting more money aside, right? If you know, when your business is cash flow positive, it can be a really good time to build up your emergency fund, is the other option. And that way, if something does happen down the road, you have that money set aside. Okay, so let's hop over to our budget sheet. I'm being attacked by a bug. And Kelly, I'm going to throw this in the chat for you so that you have it. Okay, so that's the link to our whole Google Drive. And then this is the link to our budget sheet. And you'll just make a copy of it to be able to edit. And I just wanted to give some space. Does anyone want to show us their budget? Does anyone want to like walk us through it, ask questions, just kind of share like what came up for you in the budget?
I just had one question, Emily. I just noticed it this morning, so I haven't like tried too hard to figure it out myself. On the first tab where it says the income tab, there's like the bottom darker rows that say like total income and then total expenses. Oh, wait. So that just, does that come over from, no, those are all the same numbers. So yeah, it says total income and then total expenses. It's the same as the income. Is that a weird formula thing, or is it not? I don't know if I'm missing like a formula.
Do you mind sharing? I don't
No, not at
know
all.
what you're looking at. Yeah.
I don't know if
Here, let me just, let me give you. Okay, go ahead.
Let me see. Is that, do I do that under more?
There should be like a little green that says share screen at the bottom of your toolbar.
Okay, let me see. Share screen. Okay. This is the
Anna's
one.
like, no, I don't want to share my budget with you.
Does that work?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm here and I'm seeing where it says total income and then total expenses. It just like automatically populates. Right, yeah, that's why I was confused. I don't know if I messed up.
Can you click on total in-house? And you put your expenses in, right?
I mean, they should have saved.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they
So it looks like
populate, it's populating at the bottom.
okay, go back over to the income one. Let's click on the formula and see what the formula says. Click, yeah. So that is equals C25. Why, that doesn't really make sense to me why that would equal C25.
Right, right. Yeah, that's where I was at.
What happens?
Anyone else is doing that, or did I
Yeah,
tried really hard with it because I know formulas like
Monica and Lori said theirs looks the same.
okay.
What happens when you go over to summary? Does it like give you the actual income and
No.
expenses? What the heck?
It just looks
Is
like
our
I'm killing
formula
it.
broken?
I know that it's not real.
You are killing it, girl. Okay, go back over to the income one.
Okay.
Let me see. Let me also
So yeah,
try.
this should, I would assume
That should be, how would you?
it would be C, it would
Is it
be
It
C20.
wouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't be equal C25. It should be equals C25 minus, but I
But you
don't know
don't
how
have
to do
expenses
a
on that
formula from another
page.
tab.
I
What
know,
was
I
that?
don't either. Yeah, we were saying the same thing. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Let me see if I can. Let's see. Maybe something happened when we downloaded it. So let's go to.
Yeah. And then in the first, so
Oh,
in the
look what Anna says.
Anna, what does Anna say? Where?
And I actually copied mine from the version, I don't know if it was different, but the version you sent me this spring. Like I didn't
Ooh,
read
maybe somehow it got
just
broken. Can you try
Maybe.
putting in what Anna has
Yeah.
and see what we get?
So we're saying that should go,
it was in
So
the square you're
up.
highlighting.
So go up to the where it says FX equals C25.
oh, okay, yep.
Yeah. So erase C25, but keep the equal sign. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. What? And now hit enter. Well, that didn't help
Okay.
us.
No, there's nothing there.
There's your husband.
I know. I'm like, I'm gonna go. Guys, just wait 1 second. Let's see if he's available. I'm taking you on a walk through the house with me. Hey, Matt.
Matt, Excel wizard. Brody, no.
He's on a call.
That's okay. I can play with it. I just, I literally just noticed it this morning.
Well, what I can do is give it to him after he gets off, and then I can just email you guys how we fix it.
Okay.
I can
cool.
also, let's just look up, what is it called? It's Smartsheet, right? Smartsheet annual budget tracker. Because this is very anticlimactic. Now we can't see our our graphs. I was all excited to see your graphs today. Let's see. It's called, oh my God, why do they have so many of them? Annual business budget templates. Yeah, I think it's this one. Let me just see. I'm opening like a fresh one.
Okay.
And let's just see. It still says equals C25.
Is it C25 but of a different tab? That's what like no, that doesn't either.
Does that make sense? Is it C25 on the other page? No, it's not.
No. That's what I was trying to like. Okay. Yeah, no, that doesn't make sense either. C25. No way.
Yeah, and definitely the graphs on this one also, like you said, it looks like I'm killing it, but the graph doesn't match what the numbers say.
Yeah. I was like, wow, that's not right. But it's okay.
Wait, so what are we looking at here on your graph?
I don't know.
Don't we see, can you scroll down a little bit? Aren't we seeing expenses and income? But you're saying that income is wrong?
Let me see. Total income.
Why is your income like exponentially growing?
That's why I was like, well, that's not right. It's like it's like, I think it's like adding up all of it instead of monthly.
This is disappointing.
It's okay.
Click here. Let's try this.
Yeah, I don't know anything. I know I'm pretty good with Excel formulas, but the graph part, I have no idea how to work that.
All right, well, we will get this fixed. I'll have Matt look at it and he'll fix our sheets for us, because this shouldn't, it also like should not be that complicated. I'm like surprised. Okay, well, that's sad.
That's
and
okay.
Anticlimactic, as I said. But good job putting all your expenses in. And all your income. Okay, I'm gonna.
Do you want me to stop my share?
Yeah, I'm gonna kick you off there.
Okay, bye.
And then Anna, what happens for yours where it says the
So it actually
equation you
seems
have?
like it seems like it's making the calculations correctly, but again, like Lauren's, the graph, the total numbers on the page with the summary show that my expenses are more than my income, but the graph shows that like somehow, especially because I stopped inputting income actually in August. So it shows the total number of August for like every month moving forward, the same income that I have. The total income I have in August is the same. It still populates into September, October, November, December. But the expenses are showing what's actually listed. So the expenses then suddenly go down in September, October, November, December. So it shows, it like looks like I'm killing it. It looks like my expenses are very little and my income's a lot. Whereas, yes, for some reason, cumulative income, but not accumulative expenses. But the number actually
really
shows
weird.
that, like the number at the bottom shows that the expenses are more cumulatively for the year than the income has been.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind do you guys mind just sending me the spreadsheet to my email so that I can have, because it's not going to be helpful for Matt to just look at my blank one.
Yeah, which email?
Yeah, if you want to just send it to any of them, any of my emails are fine.
Okay.
Not my opportunities one though, actually. Sorry, I do have opinions. Emily@emilyely.com is great. Send that over and then I'll have him, and feel free, anyone else, send it over and I'll have him go in there and fix it. I like how we're just selling Matt's services right now without him knowing. I'm like, wait, that was not fun. We were supposed to be able to see these pretty spreadsheets today. Okay, so what I would like to do with the rest of our time though is I'd like to give you a little space to put in any, like, you could write it down on a piece of paper, you can put it into the spreadsheet. Ideally, you put it into the spreadsheet. I want you to put in your projected income for the rest of this year. So for October, November, and December. And I would say this is where it gets a little tricky, because you're like, is it stuff that I have already got 100% commitment to in terms of like, if you're like consulting or clients, things like that? Or is it in like, or markets that you like know you're going to and you have a good baseline for how much you make at markets? Or is it, right, because there's, sorry, let me backtrack. So there's like work that you have 100% committed to, you know that this work is coming in. There's work that you're like, I've pitched this work, or I've inquired about this stuff. Like, I've thought about planning an event for the bar, but I haven't necessarily pulled the trigger. You know, things that are kind of like a maybe. And then there's stuff that, like, obviously you have not done. I tend to I like to know exactly how much work has been committed to and I know is coming in. And then I also like to have tabs on like work I've either pitched or I'm thinking about doing, so I can see how much it would influence the baseline that I have committed to. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So let's take maybe 5-ish minutes to put in projected numbers for October, November, December. If you're like, I have literally no projected work, Lori was like, what if we have no idea? Like, I plan to launch something and I'd love to have some clients, but I never know when they will be or not. Yeah. So Lori, why don't we do, if we have no idea and you're like, I don't have anything booked yet, let's put up, I would like you to plan out like what would be, if you want, sometimes I'll do like a good, better, best situation. So what would be like good enough, you'd be happy with it? What would be a little bit better? And then what would be like ideal and like, but still within the realm of reality, versus like, I'd make $1 million by the end of the year. That'd be ideal. But you know, thinking about those questions of like, what is your business set up to do for the rest of the year? Let's think about what would be like a good, better, best situation. Okay. All right. Let's take about 5 minutes. Any questions? Good. Okay. We're going to come back together just before 10:20. And I'm going to go see if my husband's going to get off his call before we end.
Hey, Emily, quick question. When you do this for, like, let's say for the course for Made for More, you have some people pay in full, and then you have some people who will do a payment plan. Are those two different line items in a cash flow projections?
Those pay in fulls, man. I like personally hate them. I'm like, don't pay me in full, pay me over time. It's easier for me to track. Pay in fulls are hard because if you you then are left with the responsibility of figuring out like every month. Like pay in fulls are hard because it can inflate your bank account and make it look like you have a lot of money, but really you should be like distributing that money over like the course of however many months. And so it can just be a little bit tricky to keep track of. I have found I actually like prefer payment plans a lot more because then it's like every month I'm getting paid that amount, and I can like project that and plan on it, versus like, oh, I just got $30,000, but I like don't know when I'm going to get money again, kind of feeling.
Okay,
Um,
so if I'm gonna do a
but
sale in October and then another in January, maybe it's just best to put the cash flow across 3 months each time because I'm gonna offer a pay in full
I,
in 3 months and just
yeah, and you'll also find like I got to a place after like I would say after like 3 launches, I got to a place where I could predict with reasonable accuracy how many pay in fulls I would have versus how many payment plans, because it was actually like pretty much the same every time, um, which was interesting. And so then I would know like, okay, I'm probably going to bring in like 15K right out the bat, and then I'm going to bring in another 10K over the course of 4 months or something like that. And we can talk about it a little bit more next week, but where it gets kind of tricky is like when you're thinking about your owner pay, because if you get a bunch of people pay in full, that can kind of influence like, well, how much do I want? Like, do I want to be more conservative and pay myself less and make this last, or do I want to like give myself a cash injection personally? But we can talk about that next week. And yeah, so I would say I actually kind of think it might be helpful if you had 2 separate line items for pay in fulls versus payment plans, because then you will be able to see if there are some trends there over time.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a lot of rambling.
No, I like your thought process. Thank you.
I'm like, what? Awesome. Okay, how are we looking? Yeah, go for it. Go, Lauren.
Question. Are we putting this in the budget sheet that we were just looking at, or in that cash flow
Yeah.
one that's in the folder?
It's really the same thing. It
Okay.
just doesn't have the cash flow one. I was looking at them, and the cash flow one just doesn't have, like, it's a condensed version of like it's income and expenses in the same place
Okay.
versus having a separate tab for expenses.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm curious. That's saying C20 minus C. I was like, I hate to make you guys move everything over, but if this doesn't work, if we can't figure out we could try like moving your income tab, like the data from your income tab, move it to the cash flow one, and then your expenses. Does that make sense? And we could see if that equation works better. But let's see if we can fix the one we have. Nice, Lori. Lori said, just noticing how much reluctance I have to put in the actual spreadsheet. I'm writing in my notebook instead. Interesting meta, but it speaks to the emotional piece of money work. Yeah. No, I think it's I know for me, anytime I've done like cash projections, especially around like my coaching business and like launches, because I've worked with a lot of like I worked with a launch team for a while, and they were always like, all right, like what are the numbers? Like how many are you expecting to sell? And like, and I was always like, no, I'm just gonna go into it and hope for the best and not have any specific data points whatsoever. And that way, if it doesn't go the way I want, I won't feel shitty. But I do think what I did learn for myself, at least over time, even if you're like not super comfortable with the projection, if we can at least keep compiling the historical data, you can then start to build the confidence to be able to make the projections. So like what I'll say, Lori, is like, it's cool if like today we just write it in a notebook. What I really want you to do is continue putting that historical data into the budget so that we can, because I was able to get to a point where I was like, I can guarantee at least 10 sales, right? And that was so helpful and relieving to get to that place where I was like, it's a minimum I will make this amount of money if I do go into a launch. Because then I could be like, okay, is that enough money? Often it was. And so then I was like, okay, it's worth the energy. I'll go do it. But in the beginning, there's a lot of this feeling of like, oh my God, I'm going to expend so much energy and I just have literally no idea like if this is going to work and how much it's going to work. And I will say how much it works is highly dependent on your market research. And so if we haven't done market research yet, that's part of it. And even if we have done the market research, there can still be room to grow in that. Yeah, go for it, Anna.
All right, here's my theory on how to use these spreadsheets. So I'm gonna keep the budget as the actual numbers.
Yep.
And so what I did just now is I'm using the cash flow projection spreadsheet to put in just Q4, like what I kind of
I love that.
And I'm estimating kind of expenses based on what I see, and there's some fixed costs that I can I know I can put those expenses in there. I'm kind of just like batch applying the expenses and using it just to calculate okay, what if I sold this many? What would happen? What if I sold this many? What would happen? What if I added in this other stream of income? So I've just kind of decided to use the two different spreadsheets in that way so that I'm not mixing the actual numbers with my imaginary numbers, because that's where I think I get down a slippery slope.
I like that. I think that sounds like a great idea. The other thing I liked about the annual budget versus the cash flow one was I really wanted you to see those charts, and the cash flow one didn't have charts in it. But that doesn't mean we can't either use both, to your point, or move back and forth. Yeah, go for it, Marikia.
Okay, so I have a question, and it's kind of an existential thing.
Yes,
because
I love those.
Childcare. I have not worked for 3 years because I just said I can't earn enough to pay for childcare. And I'm not willing to be not earning money and then literally taking away from our savings and our financial, health in order for me to work. But now we've got preschool 2 days a week. It's a private, but also Act 166. So it's still costing money, but we're in it, we're paying for it.
Yep.
And I'm trying to see what do I need to earn per hour in order to, number one, pay for travel, gas to get places, whatever, just baseline stuff. But also looking forward, I don't have care during the vacations. And this is something that we figured out through the craziest and most mind-blowing ridiculousness that my husband and I just tried to make it work after my dad passed, because he was my childcare. He was getting ready to retire, so he opened daycare when I had a baby, and then I was getting ready to run the business, and then suddenly I didn't have childcare, so we made it work, but it was brutal. What should I be just sitting down and saying my life is a business and this is how much I have to earn? Do other people do this? Do you just swing it and say I have, most of my friends have said, while my kids were young, I continued with my career and we just called it a loss to have me working, which is so heartbreaking on a feminist level. But what are opinions, feelings, thoughts on this?
I have so many thoughts about. I have 2 children in daycare full time. We spend about $3,200 a month on daycare, which is insane to me. And I actually had to give myself a raise this year in order to afford daycare. And as you all know, when you give yourself a raise, you have to find the money to give yourself said raise. Money doesn't just come out of nowhere. And so for me, obviously this is a very personal question, and everyone's going to handle this differently, and it depends on how your relationship to childcare and all that jazz. I was not willing to stop working, and I make more than childcare costs, and so if I was to stop working, it would actually put us in a deficit below what we already at. So it did make sense financially to keep going. And couple thoughts to the vacations. You're right, we don't have childcare on multiple weeks throughout the year. We have both. I've decided to I don't work on those weeks. I plan it ahead, and when you think about the cash flow projections, I don't take work on during those times.
Yeah.
Like I don't take any work on during the entire month of August and December. Like, because we have so little childcare that I've found to try and do both, I am just an angry, bitter human.
Yeah.
And usually my children receive that, right? Like they're the ones catching the brunt of that, not like politicians
What
or
the
someone else
backup,
that
the
deserves to
backup
be.
job that I want to help supplement the
Yeah.
business, but also my like mental health and my outdoor needs for my mental health is to do ski instructing. And like,
Cool.
I'm all set,
Yeah.
but the busy time is Thanksgiving week and that holiday. And like, there's no way my husband can pick up the slack, and my mom might be able to, but I also am like, maybe Smugs has lessons. Like maybe we can find this like juggling thing and whatever.
Yeah.
And I just, I'm overwhelmed already thinking about it.
I would also say, like, don't underestimate asking people for what you need, because like, for instance, with this construction training program, it's supposed to be 9 to 4 every single day for 6 weeks. And I was like, well, I have to pick my kids up from daycare. So like, I can't stay till 4. And she was like, okay. Like,
great.
We've never had anyone
I feel
leave
like
early,
our
but
culture is
we can have
moving
it
towards
now.
that. Yeah.
Right. And like, I need to pump multiple times a day, every day. And
Yep.
so like, and they've just made space for that. Do you want to come look at something real quick?
Anna, what were you going to say?
To that, Anna can probably speak better to this, but let's add to sort of the financial picture. Obviously, the piece around how valuable is it for you to be engaged in professional pursuits versus parenting is a totally personal perspective. But on the other side of the financial picture, Let's Grow Kids helped with a study to figure out how much income women earning sort of the median income in Vermont, which is like 50,000, lose if they get out of the workforce for 5 years. And it's somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000 all told. So there is also a major financial cost to losing that time of earning potentials, just to figure in.
It's awful. And I only,
Bottom line is
it was supposed to be 3 months.
It totally, but you're not alone.
Yeah, I know. I'm with Let's Grow Kids, and it's just brutal to get them first.
I found, like, to your point though, like, people are, I think culture is shifting, and culture shifts because we demand it shifts, right? And so like, I would call the ski instructor folks and be like, look, I'm a dope ass instructor and I will be so much fun. And I also have kids. Like, can we come up with a solution, right? Can they come with me? Is there something they could be doing during that week up there? Could I come only 2 days? Could I, like, you know, like, see it? Like, is there a negotiation that can be made? I'm doing
They
the
were
same thing
amazing
with
already talking to them. I think they're looking for people who are not like high schoolers, honestly.
Right.
And bring that extra level. But I am seeing a huge cultural shift in women being like, I can't, sorry, like, you need to meet me where I am, which is really nice, because that was not happening 3 years ago.
Yeah. And to your point of like pay too, there are certain months, you know, there was 1 month where we like had to pay for daycare in order to hold the seat for my infant. But we also had the nanny at the time, and I wasn't willing to let go of the nanny because I wanted to keep the nanny, because I want her to still have, like, she was counting on us for income. And so like, there was a month where I think we paid like $5,000 in childcare in 1 month. And I was like, and like, I had to pay myself extra, right? Like, I just had to pull more money from, and this is why we hopefully get to a place where we have a savings account. And like, I had to pull money from the savings and pay out extra that month to like hold the spot for those spaces. Which, again, coming back to this, like, the budget and the cash flow, if I don't know how much money is there or coming and going, it's really hard for me to make these decisions. But if I do know, then I'm like, you know what? I feel solid making that. Like, I can pay extra this month because I know I've got a project starting the month after or whatever. Yeah. I have a hard stop today because I have to go put my tool belt on and do fun things. But I just emailed your, can you just give me permission on your spreadsheets? Those of you that emailed them, they weren't on, I couldn't open them. And I will forward those on to Matt, and then he can take a look and see if he can fix it. And I'll send it back to you. And then real quick. Next week, if you haven't registered yet, feel free to go do that. And next week we'll be working on owner pay. And so we'll be figuring out how much can you pay yourself, and then we'll also start working on a plan for like how do we know when we can increase owner pay, because that's usually like the biggest place we get stuck is people are like paying themselves a certain amount and then they're like, well, there's like some money in the bank account, can I put more in? I don't know, like how do I influence that? And we'll go from there. Awesome. Okay, cool. Any last final questions before we depart? Good. Okay. If you have any questions, just email me. And if you want to have my partner look at your Excel sheet, feel free to email that to me too. Otherwise, I'll come back with hopefully some solutions. All right. I'll see you soon. I'll see you next week. Bye. Have a good day.